Breaking news, the creator of Bleach reveals a very important decision that he's trying to make regarding the final episode of the Bleach 1000-Year Blood War anime. He also revealed something interesting regarding two characters and why they never had a dialogue. And we got some very interesting information regarding Bleach and how it kept on going for so long and where Tite Kubo initially thought he was going to end the story. So in case people don't know, we are on the verge of reaching the finale of the Bleach anime as of this year, 2026. Once summertime hits, the Bleach 1000-Year Blood War anime's final part is set to begin, and Tite Kubo, the creator of Bleach, has been hard at work along with Studio Pierrot to make sure that this thing is a massive success. He has been involved pretty much every step of the way, hence why the anime has looked and has been such an incredible experience thus far, because Tite Kubo has really made sure to keep this thing exactly to his vision that he has. Oh, and before we continue, make sure to hit that subscribe and that bell so you get notified on all this anime and manga news. Well, recently on Tite Kubo's Club Outside, which is essentially an exclusive club that he has going on, where pretty much people that are in the know get to know a few tidbits about the series or what Kubo is working on, where occasionally some of the members actually reveal what's going on in there, so you get to hear about it when, of course, people actually, say what's going on. And for starters, a decision that for the most part is pretty comical, but at the same time, the fact that Tite Kubo is actually this much, you could argue tunnel vision, and this much so with an attention to detail is amazing. It's honestly incredible to think that this is how far this guy is going to make sure that he does everything exactly to the way that he feels it needs to be done. Because while this is comical, at the same time, it's kind of, I guess, the sign of a genius. Because Tite Kubo said, "Lately, I've been doing a lot of things, like deciding Renji's underwear and shoes in the final episode of the anime." Which there's a couple things to take from that. For starters, that's kind of hilarious that why? It would make you think, why is he so concerned about things like that, these aesthetic things, unless it's very significant to him, because also Tite Kubo is somebody that he has always showcased that he is very symbolic with things. There's always a message and something that Tite Kubo is trying to do. He's always trying to portray something, so if you pay attention to some of the details surrounding things, you will actually be able to understand what he's trying to tell you. So definitely something very interesting to note that Tite Kubo is, working on things like that, but it also gives you a better understanding of where things are at regarding production of the 1000-Year Blood War anime and this final core, because it was fairly recent that it was announced that Tite Kubo, after the Christmas break and all that stuff, was actually already getting back to work, and that the anime was roughly already 70% done. So there's a possibility that they're kind of going in between episodes, okay, let's work on this, and it's kind of sometimes a good thing to do, while ideally, of course, going linear and sequential with each episode and whatnot would be a fine idea. Ultimately, if you're kind of passionate about something at the moment and you want to work on that, as long as you're focused and you're not completely all over the place, I think it's fine to kind of sometimes go back and forth between things. You don't always have to go exactly step by step linear. But in general, again, a fascinating idea into the mind of Tite Kubo of where he's at with it and how much of an attention to detail he's truly paying. Then we got some more interesting news regarding Bleach from the creator of Bleach, Tite Kubo himself, because you always wonder, right, why certain characters maybe didn't interact in certain scenarios and certain scenes. There's questions that are to be had, and Tite Kubo actually answered one big one, because these are pretty significant characters to the story and they never really had a dialogue. In a new Q&A, Bleach creator Tite Kubo revealed that he didn't give Aizen Sosuke and Zaraki Kenpachi opportunities to interact with each other because their interactions would not have been very interesting, which is kind of fascinating to think about, because at the end of the day, well, Aizen is, this genius that is a trillion steps ahead of everybody, right? This guy is well, we've seen everything that he's done. And Zaraki Kenpachi is more of a brawler, for lack of a better term, we'd say brute, but Zaraki's not dumb by any stretch of the imagination, but he's more so in the field, ready to battle at all given times, and he really just loves to fight. So I gotta imagine that a scenario in that aspect of the both of them going at it, for the most part, as far as a verbal exchange, Aizen would probably just talk talk very slick to Zaraki Kenpachi, and Kenpachi would probably just be like, no words fam, let's just throw hands. So I don't want to by any means, you know, put Zaraki Kenpachi down. Of course we love the character himself, but ultimately there probably wouldn't be much talking anyways, because if Aizen even tried to say anything, especially in some of those times where Aizen was really going hardcore, Zaraki's not going to want to talk. Zaraki's going to want to throw down. Tite Kubo was definitely right in that aspect of like, it would be somewhat of a not very interesting interaction, because one of them would use his mind and genius and his words, and the other one would want to throw hands. Although considering both of them are kind of like fan favorites, it would have been a nice, at the very least, you know, even if it was just a 10-second, 20-second verbal exchange. But yeah, Aizen, Zaraki, I don't know. That's a lot of power right there. And then lastly, because y'all know Bleach has been going on for a bit now, and of course similar to every author out there, whether you go to Dragon Ball, Akira Toriyama, any of these series, oftentimes they will tell you that their initial idea, their initial concept, their initial plan when they first started their series, they had a certain window, so to speak, of time that they kind of wanted to utilize to create their series, whether it be that they had an idea of, okay, I'm gonna do this for, you know, 5 or 10 years, or we're gonna go 20 volumes. Like, for the most part, you would hear stories like that of authors where they wanted to end the series, with of course the classic debated whether or not Akira Toriyama wanted to end Dragon Ball at like certain points of the story. Ultimately, you know that majority of these creators had an idea and a concept of like where they wanted to end things at, or at the very least when they first began, like, well, how far am I gonna go with this? Well, according to this, it says here 13 years of Bleach. The interviewer started off with, when you first started publishing Bleach, where did you imagine yourself 13 years down the line? Kubo said, I thought I'd be working on a new series after Bleach, that my second serialization would begin once Bleach was over. My first editor told me that Jump had set a target. They were aiming to create series that reach around 30 volumes. But if you think about it, 30 volumes means a serialization that runs for about 6 years. He kept reminding me of that, and since I'm the kind of person who gets bored really easily, the idea of staying committed to the same manga for even 3 years already felt like a stretch. He gave me that whole speech right at the beginning of the series, and honestly, knowing myself, I thought, maybe he's right. That's why, even though I had a general idea of Bleach's story, I planned it under the assumption that the serialization would last around 3 years, because I figured at some point I might stop feeling excited while working on it. But then, working on Bleach started getting more and more fun. I wanted to draw more chapters, and that's how the series kept going, all the way till today. The interviewer said, when did you first tell yourself you actually wanted to keep drawing it longer? At the start of the story where Aizen faked his death. And this was actually something that resurfaced recently, but it was from an older interview from 13 Blades. And again, it just makes total sense that one, of course, like, you know, when you have the editorial department and they're giving you kind of ideas of like, well, maybe it could go this long or whatnot. But then also, again, props to Tite Kubo. I gotta keep on giving props where they're due. The fact that he understood himself, understands himself, he gets himself so much that he knows like, yo, if something gets me bored, if something makes me feel like uninterested, then I'm gonna probably want to stop. So it seems like what happened was that he was, you know, going so hardcore in this and fell in love with this story, these ideas, that it actually pushed him to keep on going. Whereas if maybe he was bored with it himself, he probably would have stopped a lot sooner. And I guess the message in all of that is the fact that do what you love. Honestly, create where, and, you know, work where, and put your efforts and your mind and focus in places that actually draw passion out of you, because they can make you go harder to reach your dreams. They can sustain your, you know, passions and sustain yourself in a moment of something that maybe you actually genuinely really care about. You never want to put yourself in a situation where you're doing something that you genuinely don't want to do. Ideally, you want to try and navigate towards waters or navigate towards places in general that bring out the best in you. So it's interesting that not only Kubo understood himself enough to make sure that he tells himself even before things begin, then ultimately after he started working and bringing out some of the best ideas, which is why I always say how important Aizen is in the story. Like I've said it even on my Twitter where I was talking about him praising Bleach. You should follow me on Twitter if you haven't already. He was able to essentially manifest, so to speak, the greatest ideas that he possibly felt and bring about entertainment and joy to himself as well, of something that, like, you know, he created something that was so special to him that it made him want to continue onward. And honestly, that's again the signs of a great creator, somebody that just in general had all the potential in the world and is living it out even right now. So shout outs to Tite Kubo. Let me know what you guys think about any of these things. How do you feel about Kubo's tough decisions, so to speak? Your thoughts on a exchange between Aizen and Zaraki Kenpachi? Do you think that there could have been something interesting that is just not on the surface right now of a dialogue or an exchange outside of, again, just, well, them throwing hands? And your thoughts on Tite Kubo and how how he was able to bring out the best in himself that allowed for Bleach to go as long as it did, opposed to his initial idea of, well, if I get bored, you know, 3 years, whatever. So all I have for this one. I'm Tim. As always, people, have an awesome day. Peace in.